not going to pretend that I understand every single aspect about Spirited Away. It's a film with a lot of complex themes and ideas, and what I want to do, I want to tell you my own interpretations of it and my own thoughts on the film, because it means so much to me. It's just a really good film. It's really good. So straight away, up top, it's probably one of my favourite films, along with Only Yesterday, another Studio Ghibli film. Absolutely wonderful. Everything about this film just works from a storytelling standpoint. Artwork and animation, just it all works, it all clicks together, and especially the music. The music is just mwah. Everything about the film just works, and it's great, and there is so much to talk about. I don't know how you can't like this film. But I mean, if you don't, that's fine, it's your opinion. Again, but you're wrong. You are wrong. So the film is about a young girl called Chihiro who, when moving with her parents to her new house, ends up stuck in a world full of spirits and has to work in a bathhouse to eventually get back to her parents. It sounds very weird out of context. That sounds like a really weird idea, but basically what it is, it's just Japanese Alice in Wonderland, basically, but it's better than that. It's got so much to it. It's so good. Now, there are multiple interpretations of the film, and as I've already said, there are a lot of them, and I'm not going to get into them because I don't feel like I'm smart enough. One of them is that it's all a metaphor for child prostitution, consumerism, and capitalism, and I think whilst, yeah, it's definitely 100% that as well. In this video, I'd like to focus a little more on my own personal interpretation of it, more around how the characters feel and the character arcs of it. But I think Chihiro's personal story, I think it's really clearly about learning to accept change and understand and have confidence within herself, and just learning to keep going, which is something that I think we can all relate to. The film starts with her driving to her parents' new home, and right off the bat she seems scared and like she doesn't want to do it. She's scared of being alone, which is something that keeps coming up throughout the film. She's never always completely alone, but whenever she has to be alone, especially for the first part of the film, she doesn't know how to deal with it, and she gets very scared easily. Her mum tells her that, you know, it's all an adventure and it's all going to be okay, but trust me, where this film bloody goes, it definitely is an adventure. But they get lost whilst they're driving, and they come across this theme park, which the dad is such a dick in this film. He just gets out and he's like, well, we're lost. Wow, look at this theme park. Let's go in. Should we go into the theme park? At first, the mum's like, I don't really want to do that. And the dad's like, nah, come on. She's like, okay. Chihiro really doesn't want to do it. She just wants to get back in the car and go to the new house. That's all she wants to do. This is too much for her. To be fair, she doesn't even want to go back to the house. She doesn't want to leave her friends behind. She doesn't want to go and have to start up this whole new life. But she doesn't want to change the plan now. She doesn't want to have to mess everything up and go into this unknown territory that she's never been. But they go in and they see a bunch of food there, and they start eating, and they're like, is anybody working here? Nobody's working there. And the dad just starts taking the food from the stuff, and the mom starts taking the food from the place, and Chihiro's like, what are you doing? We're not allowed to just take this. Here's with the capitalism metaphor. The dad's like, don't worry, daddy's got credit cards and money and it's all gonna be fine. It's not. It does not turn out fine. Yeah, they get very greedy, and it's definitely, you know, consumerism. They're very greedy, and they're so used to just being able to have what they like, and they feel like they're entitled to it. But this is clearly making Chihiro uncomfortable, because she's not really being properly indoctrinated into consumerism and capitalism. She's a child. She's still got that innocence about her, you know. Her spacesuit isn't fully formed yet. And you know, when you're a kid and you're told, hey, stealing is wrong and don't take things that aren't yours, that is so ingrained into your head as a kid. You're told that if this happens, you're going to get punished. So obviously she's thinking, why are my parents doing this? This isn't okay. I've been told not to do this exact situation my entire life, and now they're just doing it. What? Chihiro runs off, and she comes back. When she's back, her parents turned into pigs. I know I said I wouldn't really go on too much about the consumerism and capitalist part, but they turn into pigs, which are basically symbols for greed, aren't they, capitalists? I don't know why they say pigs are like greedy, and why they call, because pigs are quite sentient and quite nice creatures. Something to think about. Now, this is when Chihiro's journey really starts, I think. This is when she really has to go out on her own, and she has to deal with, you know, the loneliness and dealing with trying to get out of a situation she doesn't want to be in. Weird stuff in the theme park starts to happen, like spirits keep popping up and getting off boats, and her body starts to become transparent, which I'll get onto in a second. Obviously, this all seems real, and I think it is real, but I think also it's kind of all in her head. I think maybe this is a child's way of dealing with, you know, the change of having to move home and her parents kind of being a bit dickish and, you know, not being okay with losing your friends and stuff. And I think it is real also, though. It's like there are a lot of interpretations of it. Also, people say that Chihiro is whiny, but wouldn't you be if you were a 10-year-old being told to move somewhere else that you don't want to go to, and then suddenly your parents turn into pigs and there's all these spirits all of a sudden and your body's disappearing? Wouldn't you be a bit whiny? I would. I'll give the fucking kid a break. But I noticed something in this scene, and maybe I'm reading a bit too into it, but when this is all happening, it goes immediately from the middle of the day, what seems like the middle of the day, to just nighttime like that. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's nighttime now. And as this happens, I notice at one point she blinks, and there's like this kind of buzz sound as she does it, which to me kind of signifies, oh, this is in her head. This is in her head. Like her brain is coming up with this, and as soon as she blinks, that's when it starts to become a bit more real. Yeah, as I said, at some point during this whole ordeal, she starts to disappear. Now, sometimes in Hinduism and Bhakti Yoga, there's this practice where you try to identify less and less with your body. You say, I am not my legs, I am not my arms, I am not this, I am not that. And in Hinduism, in Sanskrit, I think it's neti neti. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. But basically, you keep doing that until you eventually get to your brain and you say, I'm not my mind, I am not my mind. And the whole idea behind this practice is that you can become less attached to things and feel more one with everything. Sometimes you have to go through some suffering in order to do it, but that's just the way it is sometimes. It's kind of like a necessary thing to do in order to grow and change and, you know, go through the transformation. In the Bhagavad Gita, the only reason Arjuna manages to listen to God or Krishna is because he's broken down and he's suffering a lot, and he's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna listen to what you say. And Krishna tells him if he wasn't feeling that way, this would never have happened. And the same kind of thing is happening to Chihiro right now. She's going through so much change. She doesn't want to be going through this change. She feels lonely. She feels sad. Suddenly her parents are pigs, and she's dealing with all this weird spirit stuff. And now her body's starting to disappear, and she's starting to maybe identify less with it. I mean, it's not outright said, but that's kind of that's kind of what I got from it. Her body is starting to disappear in the process, along with her friends and her old home and her parents. It is a necessary process. So eventually, E-boy Haku tells her to go and find the Boiler Man, who I wish was my granddad. He's great. He's brilliant. And basically, she has to go and ask him for a job in order to go and get her parents back. And even if he refuses, she's got to insist. And she has to do it herself. There's no getting out of it. So immediately, she's chucked into the deep end. She's alone. She has to go and do it alone. And eventually, the Boiler Man does give her a job because she was so insistent. And this is kind of like the start of her really coming to terms with who she is and having to do something even if she doesn't want to do it. Throughout the film, you can see her begin to grow her confidence more and more like this. She learns that sometimes you have to do things that even if you don't want to do. She learns as she goes that this is something she has to do. And I think the message is quite important because obviously nobody really wants to work. Nobody really wants to be stuck in a system that doesn't exactly favour them. But sometimes we have to play the long game to get what we want, and we have to do things, the necessary things, in order to get there, you know? But the key to it is the more comfortable and the more confident you are within yourself, the more you can kind of figure it out and the more you can do this stuff and you can do what you want. And this is exactly what happens with Chihiro. She gets confidence in herself as she gets more comfortable. So eventually she meets with the head honcho, Yubaba, who keeps testing her and refusing to give her a job. I wrote in my script. How did I fuck that up? So eventually she meets with the head honcho Yubaba, who keeps testing her and refusing to give her a dog. Didn't mean to write that. What? And she keeps testing her and refuses to give her a job, but Chihiro just keeps on insisting, and eventually she gives her one. But she takes Chihiro's name and calls her Sen. And again, this is like letting go of your attachments to yourself, and now she's letting go of her name as well. Now, obviously, normally having a name and identity is a massive part of who we are, and having your identity taken away from you is pretty awful. But if we're going to look at that Hindu practice again, it's kind of a similar thing. If we're going off the impression that it's all in her head and it's all some spiritual journey she has to go through, then giving up her name is very much a necessary part of the process. She'll only be able to get it back once she's comfortable and confident in herself and, you know, learns self-love, which they don't outright say self-love, and, you know, there's no hint towards that she doesn't love herself, but that's kind of the whole message behind being comfortable with yourself and confident with yourself. Haku takes her to go and see her pig parents, but she can't figure out which ones are her parents because there are loads of pigs. He gives her old clothes, and in the clothes there's this note from when she was in the car, and it's from her old friends back home. And it says, "Good luck, Chihiro, we'll meet again." And I kind of like this because this was just for her moving house, but it also kind of applies to this film. You know, she needs all the luck she can get to get through this, and she will meet everyone again. She will meet her parents again. It's just not at the moment. And Haku gives her some food, and he tells her that he put a spell on it, which will give her some strength, but instead she cries, and I think this is because there is strength in crying, and also she is human, and she can't forget that. Yeah, she has to give up all this stuff, but she's human, you know? And that's what makes us human, crying and emotions, and there's strength in that. There is strength in our humanity. Also, this is just a very fucked situation for a 10-year-old, isn't it? Like, but she starts working in the bathhouse, and this is when the most complex concept of a character comes into fruition. No face. So Chihiro finds this spirit looking pretty lonely outside the bathhouse. And as she's working, she leaves the door open for him to basically come in and, you know, chill. And he begins to be very appreciative of this, like really appreciative, to the point where he becomes quite obsessive over it and he wants to help Chihiro as much as he can. But yeah, you do kind of get this, you know, lonely vibe from No Face. And you can tell he's just lonely from the way he sounds, from the way he moves, from the way he looks. There's just a very lonely aura about him. And, you know, and the fact that he's so grateful to Chihiro for helping her. It's like, it's not normal to be that grateful about it. But eventually this loneliness turns into greed. He gets really obsessive because, you know, it starts off with being lonely, and then he gets obsessive with Chihiro because she kind of helped him not be lonely. And then it turns to greed, and he turns into a bit of a monster and a bit of a dickhead. You know, but he started off with good intentions, didn't he? He started off with good intentions because he wanted to repay Chihiro, but it just turned into obsession. There's this brilliant essay by Alan Watts called Good Intentions, based off the famous saying, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." In the essay, he says the first step on our path should be to know what you want or what you need, instead of what you ought to want. No Face is under the impression that he ought to help Chihiro and he can do everything he can for her, but this leads to obsession and eventually greed. You know, this isn't what he needs, this isn't what he really wants, but he thinks this is what he ought to want. But after Chihiro helps clean the river spirit from pollution and all that, No Face starts to give everyone in the house bath money, hoping that everyone else's greed will get him close to Chihiro. He starts bloody eating people. At first on the down low, on the DL, and then he starts fully eating people just straight up in front of everyone else. But everyone in the bathhouse is obsessed with this guy because he keeps giving everyone gold and money, but then when he offers Chihiro the gold, Chihiro doesn't want it. She's not that interested. She rejects it. And this is shit for him because this is the one person that he actually wanted to help. And the lesson here is that external things really aren't the answer. They aren't gonna get you love. Chihiro knows this now. She's known this for quite a while in the film, and she's focusing more on trying to save Haku, who... Oh yeah, Haku's now injured or whatever. Chihiro's trying to save him because, plot. But because of this, you know, No Face's money really means nothing to her. Money may seem like the most important thing, but when it comes to interpersonal relationships and people that you care about and love, it holds very little value. And I think that's what it's trying to say here. So Chihiro needs to go and return something to the person who injured Haku. He stole something from Yubaba's twin sister. And as she's doing this, she gets No Face to follow him, and at first he is just chasing her through the thing. He's going bloody crazy, he's obsessed with her. As she kind of leaves the bathhouse more, he calms down a lot and he starts to become, you know, his old self. He's throwing up people that he ate, he's calming down. And Chihiro realizes as he's following her that, oh, the bathhouse is making him crazy. All this consumerism and capitalism and all these people with the greed, that's what's making him crazy. A bit like her parents finding the food. But yeah, the further away he gets from his desires and attachments, the calmer he gets. You know, and much like Chihiro having to give up literally everything about herself in order to come to terms with her life. You know, I think No Face is kind of like the remnants of the stuff Chihiro has left behind, you know? If she stayed obsessive with her old home, if she obsessed over the fact that she's not going to see her friends again, if she obsessed over her own sadness, maybe this would have been her. Maybe she would have turned into some sort of obsessive, greedy monster who's selfish. But, you know, she's kind of made peace with who she is now. She's kind of made peace with the fact that she has to do things that she doesn't want to, and that, you know, she's okay with herself, and as long as she's comfortable and she likes herself, then there's nothing she can't do. We can see this through the fact that she's trying to help No Face, who was literally trying to eat her and obsessed with her and trying to help Haku. And this is when the infamous train scene happens. This is such a beautiful scene. After all of the madness prior, we take a couple minutes to just enjoy the silence. It's almost like kind of taking a meditation break, if anything. And we just basically enjoy the beauty of it. It's surrounded by water. And in Taoism and Tai Chi, there's, you know, the whole concept of you should be like water and you should flow with it. Once I went to a lecture by this Buddhist monk, Lama Jampa, and he said that when trying to meditate, trying to relax your mind is like trying to shape water. You literally can't do it. If you keep trying and keep telling yourself you're going to try, you're not going to be able to do it because it's like a paradox, you know? And this is exactly what this scene is. It's just letting it happen and just relaxing. And this is the message that No Face needs to hear, and he can really only get it through just sitting in silence on a train around a bunch of water, you know? In my head, by this scene, Chihiro has grown completely. There's really nothing else that she needs to do. She just needs to physically get her parents back. She doesn't need to learn anything else. I think she's kind of figured it all out by this point. And then they visit Yubaba's sister, and they return what Haku stole, and No Face decides to stay with her in this quiet, living a peaceful life, and Chihiro goes back to her parents. You know, Chihiro, by the end of the film, has found herself and remembers her real name and gets it back. So she's no longer Sen, she's now Chihiro. And her parents are back, but for them, it seems as though no time has passed at all, which does make me think maybe it was all in her head. But then at the same time, the car is dusty, she's still got the headband that she got while she was there, so maybe it did happen. I don't know, it's all very mystical and mysterious. But you know, she gets back in the car, she's dealt with this spiritual experience, she had a crazy monster spirit chase her around a bathhouse. If she can deal with that, then she can kind of deal with anything. I'm sure she can deal with moving house. Yeah, and you finish the film and you just feel generally proud of her. You know, you feel like you were there with her the whole time. Oh, this film just really means a lot to me, and I think there are a lot of messages you can take from it, and there are a lot of interpretations of the film, and this is just one of them. This is my personal interpretation of it. You can have a different interpretation. The film is meant to be interpreted, I think. That's my video on Spirited Away. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was okay. I wrote like 2 pages back to front, so like 4 pages of notes for this video. So I hope it turns out good. But yeah, like and subscribe. That's what you meant to say, isn't it? At the end of videos. Still new to this. Like and subscribe.